Okay, let's get started. A little air conditioner noise outside. Go ahead and launch Golang. Update later. Okay. So here I am, and I have this service. The service is, if I were going to put it into a layer cake, let's see if I can find that document. OmniGraffle. Oh. Sign in or sign up. Crap, I have to look that up. Anyway, long story short, if I think of this as a layer cake, so this service deals with the lowest layer. It is the interface between my software and the database. So in this case, I've got some files that some media files that I'd like to move over from a whole bunch of backups that I've built up over time and kind of organize them and put them into something coherent. And I'm using a Postgres database to kind of work through that. And so I have an interface between my software and that database. That interface is kind of largely prescribed, right? I'm just going to be talking about the API for the target database, which I'm using PGX in this case since I'm dealing with Postgres, but it's kind of already, in some ways, kind of decided for me, right? Because it's going to be the things I need to do to get files back from, or data back from the database server. And so that's going to be fairly narrow. Now, one level, the layer cake above that is kind of my model layer, right? That's where I have the concepts in my system. And I've been spending so much time thinking about how the file service should go that when I got to the controller, which is actually should be one layer above, I was totally had a tunnel vision on what this should do. But instead of worrying about the controller right now, I'm going to worry about my model and the difference between what the database views as important data and my model is based on conceptual framework of what the system does or doesn't do. So in this case, I'm trying to put together images that I've taken over time, have scattered around a whole bunch of backups. Want to stop carrying around, 1.5 terabytes of random garbage that I can't even find these images in. I'd rather have, 200 gigabytes of just images, and I can have a good shot at finding, a picture of my kid when they were 3 years old, as opposed to, I've got I've got 44,000 unique images most likely. I think most of them could probably even go away. So, what should my what should my model be? So my model in this case is an image, right? So if let's go ahead and create a new file. Let's call this image because that's the concept that I'm dealing with, right? So I've got an image, and we'll make it a struct for now, but it might not be a struct, right? So I could see image being an interface, and we say, okay, get me this image, and give me the bytes that back this image, and that could come from a variety of sources, et cetera, et cetera. Um, we could have different implementations of image, possibly, but for now, because I don't know, I haven't decided that. Let's just leave it as a struct. That makes the most sense. In general, I think that's what I like to do. Is I like to start with a struct, and pretty quickly I can tell if I'm going to have multiple implementations of that interface, in which case, or implementations of that API, in which case I'll move it to an interface and create concrete implementations. Okay, so we've got an image. I don't know what's in there right now. I haven't decided that yet. Um, so the next question is, what do we do to find an image? Um, Certainly, I mean, how do we talk about images? How do we say, hey, look at this picture? I mean, we show people a picture, but how do we kind of identify a picture? Well, you know, logically, I think that maybe like what the picture's about, a picture of a truck, um, maybe a place or time where we took the picture. Hmm, that's good coffee. Uh, and if you think about how we we have albums. Albums are the old way of doing it was you have some sort of photo album and you have the pictures from an event or you have the pictures for a given year or something. So I feel like we need some way to locate. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and call it that. I'm going to call it the image locator. So, and now I know this is going to be an interface because it's going to be the kind of thing that I'm going to test. And when I test it, I will probably, um, well, it'll be used by another layer higher up in the layer cake of concepts. And as it moves up that layer cake, I want to mock this out so that the controller, when it calls the image locator, um, it I can mock out the image locator with like a test image locator that is going to return some values that I give it or whatever. Okay, so I've got my image locator, and what should it do? So I don't. So this might be one approach. So I could do find by date range, and I could have start end, and that returns back a list of images and possibly an error, right, if something went wrong. Um, what else would we have? Find by subject. Um, by location. Find by event. Okay, so we could do something like find something by date range, subject, location, event. However, we might want to combine these, right? So we might want to say find the images of um, find the images of my sister's wedding on the day before or whatever, or or find pictures of a birthday as an event, and I have a date range of my kid's birthday or something like that. So we need some way to combine these, right? So what's a good way to do it? Well, this does also imply something. It implies that images have a date. It applies a subject, maybe multiple subjects, right? So um, I could look at an image and I could say it is a wedding, um, and it's also a trip. For example, if it's a destination wedding, it could be both. It could be two things, right? So we've got subjects, and that is, I don't know, array of string right now, or a slice of strings. I'm guessing there's going to be one location, right? And the location is not going to be really that long. I'm not going to think of my trip to Aruba by the ICBM address for Aruba. And event. I don't like subjects. People isn't quite right, because I could have taken a picture of a thing, right? I could have said, oh, there's an interesting insect. Well, that's fine. That's fine. So, this could be something like, um, this could be, something like, this could be something like January 3rd, 2019. And subjects could be moth, kid, location, home, event. Maybe there is no specific event for this. What else would be useful? Oh, probably description, right? Right. So we probably have something like, if I take the time, I could probably put in some sort of like description. That makes sense. Okay, so we've got well, maybe we've got query parameters. We've got to say we've got a date range. From date. Oops, tell what it is. I'm just riffing here. From date to date. Subjects, locations, description. So maybe this just collapses to find and takes a query parameters and returns back images and possibly an error. Okay, so it's going to be, my find is going to be a more complex query, right? I'm going to have to take a look at the kind of the set query parameters, um, and kind of decide what I want my SQL to look like based on that, right? So, but here's the thing. I don't store any of that data right now. So I don't have a data. What do I have for a database right now? I've got a wicked simple database. These are all the files I found, which, by the way, these are just the JPEGs. And I found that in some cases I have duplicates of the file. Okay, so that's what I have as a database so far. So it looks like in order to support these concepts, I'll need to go back to my file service and kind of to support this level of functionality, to support this kind of model, I'm going to need a little bit more stuff at the service level. So this gets the basic kind of idea around the image source, which is a path on a file system, a hash, so I can kind of figure out if I'm talking about the same image or not, a file name, which is just the last part of the path, just for convenience, and like if I want to do a search based on file name, and a size. So in order to bridge the concepts we have here in image to the service, we need to start adding in those additional concepts. So we probably need think of it this way. This is what I'm thinking. So image is the concept, right? The implementation of that concept at the service level is a file on the file system. Could this be some other implementation, right? Could it be a blob in some kind of object store? Sure, right? So right now we are backing it with files on the file system, but it could be objects in an object store. It could be an API that returns back to me images that I've uploaded somewhere else, right? So this is correct. I think file service is correct. We pull this stuff off the file system. Now, I don't know that I actually want to go back in here and add the concepts from image into file service, right? Because this data could apply to something stored in a blob store or an API through an API somewhere, right? So given that, it doesn't make sense, I think, to put it in file service. we'll leave what's in file service, which is the files on the file systems that are backing some of the images, right? Okay, so going back here, thinking about these concepts, what do I have? How do I back these? How do I put something together that allows me to manage these concepts, given that the actual implementation of how the image is stored may differ? So I think it's more like a metadata service, and that's all fine and well, right? But how do I connect it back to an image, right? I would have to have another concept where I store the notion of an image and or the metadata and kind of a reference as to where that is. So this could be, I have this all files table. Um, Maybe I actually create a different table that is all the unique URIs of images I've uploaded. Um, or maybe I don't create a table for that at all. But I do store the metadata, and the metadata does have a URL for the image, right? So I think what I have is a metadata service. And so I've got a file service. I think I have a metadata service that wants to come out of this. And then the image, so when I go into the image locator, I say find me an image. I go into, I really am querying the metadata, and the metadata then says, oh, this metadata is for something backed with a file. Of course, you can look at it and say, well, that's really the image, right? That's really the metadata. What makes this an image? And not just the metadata that I store. Well, the fact that it's an abstraction, right? So image should probably have something like let's go think about the metadata and let's come back to this abstraction, because this may move out of image. Let's move back. Let's go back to metadata. So let's go ahead and create a new Go file, and that is the metadata service. And I think I have a pretty concrete notion of what this needs to do. So I'm going to go ahead and add the test file as well. Okay. So I know I definitely have this, right? And so the metadata, and this is definitely a concrete struct. So what is this? This is the date, the file, so as you know probably that images are usually tagged in the extended EXIF information with the date the image was taken, which could be different than the file, right? The file on my file system could say, um, June of 2021 when I started, going back and putting together all my old backups. But it the image might have been taken back in 2011. So we got a date, uh, in terms of the metadata, one of the things we didn't have an image were tags, right? So I'm not sure if we want tags. So we know it occurred on a date. Um, subjects are really tags. If you think about it, that subject concept is really a tag concept, and that's a list of a slice of strings, right? So I go in and I say tag it. Generally, I'm going to have one location. Right? What else did I have an image? And an event. I'm going to say event's a tag as well. Let's say for the purpose of storage, an event is a tag. Location is unique, right? Because a picture only happens at one specific location. Yeah, I think for the storage purpose. So here's what I'm thinking. Um, we have tags, which are the way we store it in the database. But then we have certain like well-known tags, which are, say, locations and subjects, which are handled through the user interface differently. But at the end of the day, they're just tags. Okay. Now, here's the thing. We need this metadata refers to something. This metadata has a reference to something, and it's an overused term, but let's call it locator. Let's make a struct for now. Yep, can't use the same word twice. Location. So we got this concept of the locator, and so the locator is going to be probably a source, right? So I could totally see this being database, blob, right? And then we need to be able to identify it in that locator. So here's the question: is locator a concrete thing? Or is it a type of thing? And maybe it's really so we've got a locator interface, and we have Let's leave that as a string for now. What does it return as? How does it return back the location? I mean, that could be an ID in a database, it could be a URI. Really, bytes, right? Probably a reclose or an error. And then we've got type. Locator source. And this would be database, or this would be files. And data IO. File system locator would probably include right? So we got a file system locator as a path, it's a string. Right, and so this would be something like return open so yeah, there you go. So then we could have something like type min.io and so what would I need to know for my min.io locator? I probably need to know the host port bucket. Or path, I guess. Right? So let's say func and source will be something like sorry, used to some languages which automatically return the last thing. Locator data so this would do something like open connection file and return reader. Right? So that would be something like that. Or maybe read the whole thing in start mode. I don't know. Anyway, long story short, but I don't have one of those yet. I have one of these. Excuse me. So from a practical standpoint, I know what this database table is kind of going to look like. I've got two options. I've got either a table that looks like, so this is my locator table, and I've got a locator table that looks like type, and then in this case I've got path, and then for MinIO I'd have host, port, host port, and path. And then for some service I might have API key. And so based on the metadata, so I'd have what the data ID, so could it be one to many? It's going to be one to one, but could it be one to many? Sort of, no, maybe, I don't know. Could a metadata? Yeah, sure. No, that would actually make sense because let's say, for example, I take the image, it's on my file system, and then I decide to move it to a different path in the file system. That's legit, right? Um, I move it to a different path in the file system. It's still the same metadata information, right? It was still taken at the same date. It's still about the same stuff. It's still at the same location. It's just a different path, right? Or maybe I upload it to MinIO, or maybe I upload it to some sort of Azure long-term storage. But the point is, it's still the same data. It's just at a different location. So this is probably a legit approach. Okay. So locator describes the place where the bytes of the image are actually stored. It's really, let's start thinking a little bit broader. So I'm working right now with all my JPEGs, but I have got a whole bunch of raw files and I've got a whole bunch of movie files that I haven't even touched. So metadata is really the metadata about the media. Well, that raises an interesting problem because now, so I've got metadata, and this covers the stuff that we'd have be specific to, now specific to images. Well, sort of, because let's say this, so this would be good for JPEGs and raw images and movies. might also have additional information like runtime length or I don't know, maybe resolution. I don't know. Um, do I have anything besides images and video? I don't really have sound. I think I'm going to add run length. I am going to add runtime. And how do I want to store this? And that's a time.duration, duration, right? Um, is encoding part of the metadata? Let's think about this for a second. So I have a picture, it's a JPEG, and then I take that JPEG and for archival reasons I blow it out to a TIFF, an unencrypted, or sorry, uncompressed TIFF. So it's the same date, the same tags, the same location. It's at a different location. It's at a different location, but it is a different encoding. Huh. Interesting. I'm going to go adding it here. Does it become different metadata if the image is re-encoded into another format? So I take the compressed video, I save it as uncompressed video. No, encoding is not relevant to the metadata. Okay, so where are we? So I think I'm okay with this. A given piece of media. And let's stop calling image. Let's say media are actually stored. So because locator will have different implementations, now I might actually have two different file services, right? I have one file service that takes the absolute path, definitely, but maybe I create a different kind of file service, um, which, like for example, I'm on Mac OS. I could build a bundle, and it would be like an Aperture archive. All right. Well, I'm going to call it a day for today on the stream. But yeah, I think I kind of worked through this. Um, think I kind of worked through this, and I think this was definitely missing. Um, and I think I know what the table layout's going to be. All right, well, I'm going to call it a day for this stream, and I will continue working on this, but I will try to stream again tomorrow.